We got 30 people in the room, and the chat's already lively, so we'll get started. Johnny Knoxville was first in the house. Retired Butcher Boy checked in shortly thereafter from Northern California. Canadian Robot Lady's in the house. Promised last week that she'd show up soon, and soon is now, which is sort of like a Smiths song. But Bob Blah Blah is also in the house complaining about me taking down my Christmas lights, but I had them hanging right there behind me. And as a result of that, if I left them there, I couldn't have gotten onto my set to do my videos. Hey, Daniel, how you doing, my friend? Daniel Kester from California. Also, Mark Miller, sup? Yeah, it's raining here in southeastern Michigan. I got 43 degrees and light rain. They're saying we're going to have about an inch of accumulation of rain today, which beats snow. I mean, you don't have to shovel the rain, but the ground is frozen, so it just sits there. So it's just pools of water out on the lawn. Viper Mike S. Happy New Year, sir. Great New Year of motoring awaits you. I hope so. Padre, greetings from soggy South Georgia. Maybe it's raining everywhere. It's raining all over the world. Alan Brown Sr. from Scappoose, Oregon. And Johnny Knoxville might start a simul chat on IRC. Why not? Gavin Taverner, is that really the genuine bona fide Canadian Robot Lady? Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Dave Beddoes from White Rock, BC, Canada. We have a very, very small town in Michigan called White Rock. There's almost nothing there, but there is a White Rock offshore in Lake Huron, about halfway up the thumb of Michigan. Mr. Landfill, hi. Elpa V29. Gilberto Avina, sup. Walter Burton, good afternoon over there from the Philippines. Checking in from the Philippines. Very cool. SUS TV. How was your Christmas? Christmas was fine. I hope yours was as well. JP checking in from Stormy, South Carolina. Stormy? Localized down trees. That's not good. You mean wind storms and whatnot. Wow. Although we had some pretty bad winds here not so long ago, but I didn't lose any trees in that last one, but I do from time to time. Tom Rogers, hi, Steve. Yeah, it's just another excuse to break out the chainsaw, unless it hits something, which is always bad. Stop, spam, and I'm thinking. Good afternoon from Virginia. Johnny Knoxville's been raining all week here, and my bonsai trees are getting a soaking. Yeah, especially, it's kind of like when a dachshund's got to go out and do its business in the snow, right? Because the snow is this deep and the dachshund's legs are only this long. The bonsai trees like underwater. Hey, Pat K, longtime lurker from Georgia. Well, thank you for saying hello. I appreciate that. Ironically, and doing the math on this, we often have hundreds of people in the room, but only dozens of people talking. A lot of people do just watch and listen. That's fine. Absolutely fine. But if you got a question, comment, or just want to say, hey, check in and do that, I'd appreciate it. Mike Torello from slightly warmer Central NJ. And Ron Valley is checking from Northern Illinois. But Happy New Year. Yeah, and that's coming up real soon, too. The Detroit Lions, by the way, are not playing today. I guess they play tomorrow. And the Michigan Wolverines are playing on New Year's Eve. So we'll see how that goes. It's a rematch against Alabama. Last time Michigan played Alabama, things went Michigan's way. That might not happen again this year. But as I mentioned at the beginning of the year, if Michigan could just only beat Michigan State and Ohio State, I thought that was too much to ask for, and they did it. So I'm happy. Did Amnesia, hi from California. Dale, Happy New Year. Jose Castillo Jr., hello, everyone. Kayla McComber checking in from Montana. Moving to Montana soon. Going to become a dental floss tycoon. Joey Cactus, Happy New Year from Clinton Township. Clinton Township is not far from where I am in southeastern Michigan, assuming that's Clinton Township, Michigan. Deaf Dog Productions, Windy in Colorado. Charlie Funk, hi, Steve. Have a great day. And you too, my friend. Whoa Gaming 101, hello from Washington State. Fat Dan, sunny here in Alaska. Ironically, it's sunny in Alaska, raining in Michigan, and soggy in Georgia and South Carolina. Who'd have thunk it? Mr. Landfill says rain for the next 4 days in Michigan. I've got a weather report that claims it might be sunny tomorrow, but then rain the next day. But, these things change from time to time. But they are literally calling for rain all day today, but not heavy, but it's going to add up to an inch. So that's a good amount of rain. Ace 420. Hello, Steve from North California. Hey, Ace Freely played at the Token Lounge night before last. Token Lounge is a little club in a suburb of Detroit, and Ace Freely played there. And a good friend of mine went and saw him play and got a guitar pick and was sitting about 3 inches from the stage because that's how that place is laid out. So all paved 29, Ohio, OHIO. Ohio is a 4-letter word. Kayla McComber, born in Michigan, joined the military, fell in love with Montana. My dad still does not understand. Now, I know people who were born in one place and fell in love with another place. Nothing wrong with that. Jason Finch, Dr. Salty, good afternoon from Macomb Township. Not terribly far from Clinton Township, I don't think. G. Keyman 565, currently in Lapeer, which is southeastern Michigan, but up a little ways from Detroit. Lapeer is a cool little town. I've been over there before, many times actually. I used to drive through it and back, going to Bad Axe from Birmingham. Joseph, Mama, Happy New Year, Steve. Danny D from Tampa, Florida, where it's sunny. Red Pool Jack, I'm curious if you plan to cover the Kentucky Mullenstein's shooting of the judge by the sheriff. I've seen so much about that. I have not done a video yet. I might. It's just crazy, the allegations, and the story just keeps getting weirder and weirder. So, Geraldine, hi, Steve. I gained a little weight. I hope your holidays were and will be safe and healthy. Thank you. I'm not concerned about your weight. I mean, obviously, if you are, that's fine. I think a lot of people gained a couple over the holidays. So what are you going to do? Mr. Landville noticed that I mentioned Frank Zappa a few minutes ago in code. Michael Parent from Bonfield, Ontario. Rain here in the north. And Beata Graf av Delhagen, good morning from Needs Coffee, Oregon. I think there's a lot of places in the country that need coffee right about now, right? So, by the way, I hope Daniel doesn't mind, but Daniel sent me a note yesterday and said, Steve, do you know anything about U-boats? U-boats? And I said, yes, I've read quite a bit about them. Why? And he said, well, I saw in a recent movie, I believe it was The Enemy Below. The movie wasn't recent, but he'd seen the movie recently. And the U-boat commander ordered them to dive. And he said that the guy pushed a lever and the boat went down. He said, is that really how that works? And I said, well, there's two things they can do to make a boat dive, and they do them both simultaneously if they're trying to do it quickly. And one is there's these horizontal rudders on a U-boat. So a rudder, think of it, goes like this, makes you go left or right. But if you turn them horizontally, you can make the boat go down or the boat go up. And they call them diving planes. And up at the front of the boat, they have these diving planes. And so to get the boat to go down, you push those down, and that push the nose of the boat down. But you could also flood the ballast tanks. And I'm assuming that's a separate lever. But because it's Hollywood, they just want to have a guy pushing lever that says dive. It makes things easier than actually trying to show things realistically. So they don't get the finer details right in all those Hollywood movies, but that's how things are. Lori McDougall, hi from Vancouver, Canada. Tim Talcott, good day, sir. Orlando, Florida. 2025 is going to be a hoot. I hope so. Dan Boyd, Ace plays freely. Back in the New York Groove, which I did not know that was a cover when I first heard it back in the day, but it's a cover of a disco song. And he rocked it up a little bit. Mark Miller says it's always a good year when the Michigan Wolverines beat Ohio State. Hail to the victors, valiant. Whether you like them or not, you got to admit there's two things about Michigan that are objectively quite, I think, interesting. One is they got one of the most recognizable helmets in all of sports. The Michigan helmet, the winged helmet, and their fight song is pretty good. Okay. I've heard fight songs for other schools, and I'm like, what? Is that their fight song? Really? What? No. And the fact they've got such a catchy fight song, I think, is pretty cool also. But I understand if you're an Ohio State fan, you'd never want to admit that. But I think that people who are unfamiliar with any of these rivalries, if you simply heard the U of M fight song, you go, oh, that's a pretty good fight song as far as that goes. Alien EV, Steve, hello from McCall, Idaho. Have you seen a judge use a gavel recently? Gavels are ceremonial, and gavels, they're also used by auctioneers, believe it or not. But technically speaking, a lot of judges have them but don't use them, and the judges make a ruling and just keep going. But occasionally you'll see the judge actually, bang the gavel, and more often than not, they do it to restore order in the court, get everyone to shut up. So. Vinny Northwest says that's a great movie, referring to Enemy Below. Yeah, it's got some strange issues in it. Things that would call out to anybody who's studied that era, the era of history. For one thing, as the men on the boat are abandoning a ship, the U-boat puts another torpedo into it, I believe, which is contrary to the rules of the Geneva Convention. If people are abandoning a ship, you're supposed to actually let them. Greetings from Arizona desert. No moisture here. Says messy hot. We often forget that deserts always aren't always dry, but they're often dry. They're often dry, and they're often noted for their weather extremes. BR59 OU812, actually BR549, says last week I said I had a 2000 Saturn. Best part about the car is it has a stainless steel exhaust, plus the frame is painted and fiberglass panels. Oh, it had a bunch of great things going for it. I mean, the idea was pretty good. And the body panels never rusting, for instance, a good idea. Painted frame's not a bad idea. Stainless steel exhaust. I've had a couple of vehicles that have had those. And it explains why some people don't have to get their exhausts replaced every few years in Michigan, because Michigan road salt is quite corrosive and chews up the undersides of vehicles. Bob Bong's checking from Niles, Michigan. Mark Miller says, my mom used to sing Hail as a Michiganian to us as kids. Lou T, 1501, good morning, go Ducks from the University of Oregon. I had a friend who went to the University of Oregon, got a degree in architecture. And that's the first one. Ducks? The mascot is the Ducks, really? But, how many schools can have their mascot be the Eagles? Like every other high school in Michigan, it's the Eagles. So, Toby Kenobi, good afternoon from Jacksonville, Florida. Game over, says Johnny Knoxville. Matthew Turley says, you sound like Chris Plant. Chris Plant. I don't know who that is. I'm sorry. Bob K says sailors will run to the back of the ship and or front of the sub in times of emergency. Well, in a submarine, if they're diving, like a crash dive in World War II, if you are non-essential personnel, i.e. you're not operating something, it's to the front of the boat. And they portray that quite accurately in the movie Das Boot, the German movie about the submarine warfare. The movie is fictional, largely fictional. But they did the boat scenes very, very accurately. And so if you were in charge of something like, in the engine room, you would not. But if you're simply a guy sitting in his bunk and all of a sudden you hear the alarm to dive, you roll out of that bunk and you run to the front of the ship as fast as you can, because the shifting weight will help the boat dive faster. And every second counted. Doug Jones says most cars now have stainless steel exhausts. Yeah, but back in the day when Saturn did that, that was not the case. Hence, it was an innovation. Not an innovation, but something they did. So I think most of my Explorers have had them as well. Kevin Goros Dieta says, Steve, should there be regulation on newer bright LED headlights? I've noticed a lot of people lately don't know their brights are even on. I've been driving along and see some of the brights, and just they get to me, they knock them down, and it's like, you just realized that now, huh? But yeah, they need to watch the level of the brightness, the brights versus the low beams, and then also how they're aimed. I've seen cars driving on the road where they're all wacky like that. Oh boy. Stephanie Howe says the college I work at in Eastern Maine, a community college, is in fact the Eagles. And I think Eastern Michigan is the Eagles as well. Although they could have changed that again as well. I'm not sure. Gilberto Avina says, I recently got a credit card that comes with many benefits, one of them being the complimentary Hertz President's Club. Needless to say, I will not be using that. Yeah, I wouldn't. I couldn't get myself to rent a car from Hertz right about now. I just couldn't do it. If you want to, you can live dangerously. Mark Miller says, just curious, have you done a podcast about the healthcare CEO? No, I have not. I'm not quite sure if that merits a video, because the only reason that's made the news is it's become so political and who the guy was. But I'm not trying to belittle that at all. But there are other people who get murdered every day in America. And so I'm going to watch it and see if it becomes something interesting legally, other than simply, it's being politicized so heavily. So Daniel Kester says, here in California, headlight brightness is covered in the state's vehicle code. Oh, it's covered in every state's vehicle codes for the most part. It's just a question, does anybody enforce it? And that's the question. David Benner says White Death did not use a scope. He's, of course, referring to Simo Heha. Not quite sure why you're bringing that up, but he was using a rifle with iron sights in the wintertime, and his numbers were insane. But yeah, I know all about him because he was a Finnish sniper in World War II. LRG Howdy from Orlando. 69 Coronet 500 says, after 250 years, the bald eagle is finally our official national bird. I actually saw a bald eagle about a week ago, and I've only seen one or two near where I live in, of all time. I've seen them a lot in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, and even in the northern Lower Peninsula, you'll see them fairly often. But to see one in southeastern Michigan when you're not near the river or the lakes, very uncommon, very uncommon. But I saw one about a week ago, and I first saw it. I thought maybe it was a turkey vulture because we had turkey vultures all over the place. Turkey vultures, sandhill cranes, and a lot of red-tailed hawks. Those are the large birds I see in my area. And I saw this bird, and its wingspan was too big to be a hawk. And then I got a clear view of it. It was clearly a bald eagle. So, yeah, stop spamming them. And also Mark Miller talk about oncoming vehicles having automatic high beams. But if the high beams don't shut themselves off automatically, then they're doing it wrong. Because my new truck's got those. And if I'm on the road deserted, the high beams are on. The second the car appears way down here, they lower. And I've seen cars that get right up to me and then they lower. It's like, okay, something's out of whack there. Oh, wow. Oh, Gaming 101 has come to Washington State. They're everywhere. Oh, there's places where they're everywhere in Michigan, too. If you go up by Lake Superior or over to Wisconsin and Minnesota, right along the shoreline there of Lake Superior, they're everywhere. It's just they're not everywhere down where I live. Fred Stone says, hi from Stony Plain, Alberta, Canada. Soon to be the 51st state. If Canada became the 51st state, it would be quite large. Tin Pan Alley standards. I saw a bald eagle dive and collect a duck for dinner on my sister's lake. I once was mountain biking and I came around a curve and there was a red-tailed hawk and a duck in a bit of a standoff. The duck was on its back and had its feet up like this. And the hawk was standing on top of it. But it couldn't get its claws where it could to do anything to the duck. And my brother and I sat there and watched it for like 5 minutes going, how is this going to end? And then finally the hawk got bored and flew away. And the duck flipped over and jumped in the river and paddled off. So Doug Jones says most people don't know how to use the steering wheel. Well, yeah, that's probably asking too much. Dan Boyd, isn't an eagle's nest called an eyrie or something like that? It might be. I'm not sure. Eagle's nest can be quite large. I know that. I mean, huge, huge. Mr. Landfill says a bald eagle at nests in Linden, Michigan, near a friend's house. I assume you're not meaning Lake Linden up in the UP, but Linden, which is over near like Fenton or Holly. Yeah, there's lakes over there. And it wouldn't surprise me that they'd be over there. Bald eagles love to be near lakes and rivers because of the fish. They love to fish. Brian B. Hi, Steve. Appreciate your non-political reviews. Best wishes for 2025. Coming from Ottawa. Ottawa, the 51st state. Mr. Fix at GA says they were referring to my comment telling you about a video of him, the White Death, which is Simo Heha, the sniper from World War II. It's not me, 07. Good afternoon, Steve and crew. David Benner says a red-tailed hawk wiped out his duck flock. Really? Well, that's too bad. I mean, I understand they got to eat too, but you'd think they'd mix it up or something, you know? The birds are free saw a bald eagle on the St. Joe River in Fort Wayne. Back when I lived in Eau Claire, Michigan, there was a river there called the St. Joseph River. And I used to see bald eagles along there also, but that was way over on this side of the state, not over on this side. CC says the live eagle nest cams on YouTube can be a good watch, but difficult in hard times. Yeah, I've seen some of those. They actually set up a live webcam on a nest. I've seen it for eagles' nests and also for hawks and falcons that nest in buildings or on like perches or balconies, things like that. Kurt's Corner, do you have an opinion on the John Benet Ramsey case? I drive past the murder house all the time. I wrote a chapter about that house in my book, American Murder Houses, and I'm not really quite sure what to think. That story was that the crime scene was so messed up so early. The cops did not handle it at all correctly. There's too much weird stuff in that case that we may never know what happened, and it's unfortunate because we'd like to solve these things. So, yeah, Mr. Landfill says Lyndon's over in the Fenton area. Andy, New York, 29 says a bald eagle nest can weigh 2 tons. Yeah, I think that's because what often happens is that they will build a nest over time. And when they return to the nest, if it's still there, they'll build more onto it. And I remember I've seen one or two where there's like a tree and it looks about the size and weight of a tree house, but it's a nest. It's this gigantic nest. So Johnny Knoxville says there's a great eagle cam at Big Bear Lake, California. And Steve G says we've got bald eagles here in San Diego. It's Not Me 07. Fun to watch the Maine, New Hampshire loons nest too. Loons are lake birds. Do they nest in the water or nest near the water? I know that I've seen loons with their babies riding on their backs, which is kind of cool. And I know that loons make some interesting noises. They've got a lot of them up near Copper Harbor. So Dan Boyd says bald eagles are hoarders because they're hoarding so much stuff in their nests. Duncan Campbell, morning, Steve. Sorry I'm late. No, but you're ahead of us still because you are in tomorrow, aren't you? Good Citizen says bald eagles refer to the white feathers. Yes, they're not actually bald. They are feathered, but because of the white head, makes it look from a distance like, oh, it's got no head covering, i.e., it's bald. But hey, what are you gonna do? Mitchell Smarika, hey Steve, fellow Michigander here watching since I was in high school. Keep it up. Happy New Year. Question is, how long you been out of high school? Alan Brown, how about drones as our new national bird? There you go. Johnny Knoxville, the bald eagle nest can be 8 feet in diameter. D. Woods says a few eagles around the Bay City State Park and near Quanakasi. Yeah, I know it's a lot of places that are known for, like, I know as you get down towards, like, for instance, the Monroe area, there's a lot of them down there. Is it Point Pelee on the other side? And there's a lot of it, yeah. And I mean, I know there was a time when the bald eagle numbers dropped dramatically in the 60s and 70s, but they've come back. Spider Morphine, what's your favorite burger in and out? You know, it's been a while since I've eaten at one. And I like them all. I usually just get like a double. So David Benner says bald is Old English for white hair. Good Citizen, Happy New Year to Steve and all the crew. Hey, Sergeant Bob says Sandhill Crane is ribeye of the sky. I've heard that before. I've never hunted one. I've never eaten one. I've seen quite a few of them. I actually had a pair of them in my backyard this past summer with a baby, but it was walking through and I never saw it again. And I know the baby couldn't fly, but I was trying to think where the nearest pond was. And I think it may have had to walk a couple hundred yards to find some place to hang out. I never saw it again. So Don Wayne, long live the Bengals. Have a manic Monday tomorrow. James Milano, hi Steve. Jim from Puebla, Mexico. Puebla. And Daniel Kester does wish everyone a happy New Year. Mark Miller said he went to an In-N-Out there in Aurora, Colorado, was not impressed. Here's the thing about In-N-Out is that it's still a privately held corporation, and they're expanding slowly. And they've gotten so many offers to sell out, and they just refuse. And I respect them as a business. I love the burgers. I ate them when I was in law school quite a bit, but haven't been to California now in a couple of years. Last time I was there, I didn't even get a chance to eat there. So STP World says, I saw a prisoner live streaming in Georgia. Is that legal? I have no idea. The question is it legal for him to have a phone where he was. I'm assuming he was live streaming on a phone. But I mean, I know some places, if you're in prison, literally in prison, you're not supposed to have a cell phone, but you hear about people who get them. And it seems to me if he's breaking the law and he's doing it so publicly as to live stream it, that will probably come back to bite him, but you never know. Power Inherent says, sent you an email on the traffic law reform petition. We have on change.org. Nevada was the start. Now the rest of the nation would love your support. I never saw the email, so I'm thinking it may have been grabbed by my spam filters, and I apologize. But I'm not quite sure because, I mean, traffic law, I mean, there's some good ones and some bad ones. So Johnny Knoxville got me an In-N-Out shirt from Denver. Thank you. I think I've actually got 2 or 3 in my rotation right now. By the way, I wore one today, although it won't show up on camera till tomorrow. I wore a shirt for Cyberdyne Systems that somebody sent me. You know, the Skynet people. So, Newspin says they love In-N-Out. Prices, great burgers, are like an 8 out of 10. I put them right up there at the top. I don't know of a better burger out there. I've heard people say that Five Guys. Five Guys are good, but I wouldn't say they're better than In-N-Out. I mean, there's some gourmet sit-down places. There's a place called J. Alexander's that's in Michigan, North Carolina, and also Florida. They've got great burgers also, but they cost like 5 times what you pay at an In-N-Out, so it doesn't quite count. So, Mr. Fix at GA says, no, it's not legal for prisoners to have phones here. But again, are we talking about a prisoner who's incarcerated in a prison, or someone who's simply been taken into custody, or somebody sitting in a jail? These are all distinctions. So, Tom says In-N-Out burgers are good, but the best thing about the place is that they have the best milkshakes. They don't put any nasty garbage on top of them, and their fries are always raw. What I like about them is I believe, at least they used to, grind their own meat. They had their own meat processing. So it wasn't like the meat was processed in Kansas and then frozen and driven by truck like 3 days across the country. I think falcons are coming back as well regarding the actual birds. Yeah, and falcons are the ones you often hear about nesting in tall buildings, like on like the balconies or the windowsills. And it's because in nature, they would nest on places like, edges of cliffs and so on. Eric Ellis has opened a decent fast food restaurant in the South, and it'll be terrible. I've seen it in almost every instance. Padre, I'm thinking about buying a Tesla from Hertz. Is that a bad idea? Just trying to figure out how to make that a trifecta. James Nordbeck, Five Guys is too salty. Wade Pittenger, Whataburger is good. I don't think I've ever had a Whataburger though. And Uberfine agrees with that. Taco Cat, of all the places that I've been jailed, I was never allowed a cell phone. I'd ask you, what's the sample size on that? How many different places have you been jailed? And by the way, Lisa Bonet ate no basil is also a palindrome. Lisa Bonet ate no basil, front to back, back to front, just like Taco Cat. Just trust me on that one. Oh, Michael Atos went to the last Hot Now in Sturgis, Michigan last night. Same taste I remember as a kid. Lansing had 3 of them back in the day. I seem to recall one of those in Flint and possibly one someplace in Oakland County. I can't remember the Hot Now, but it's just one of those things that didn't quite work. Yeah, Lewis Browning, buy an RV from Hertz. C513B2Z9 has artificial intelligence had an impact on your law practice? No, because I don't use it. None of my opponents have been stupid enough to use it, and the courts don't use it. But I've seen other attorneys get in trouble for using it, and then they claim later, like, "Oh, I was trying to save some time or something." Canadian Robot Lady has not tried In-N-Out burgers. I was going to say, how un-American of you, but of course you're from Canada. I assume that they don't have In-N-Out in Canada. I never stopped thinking about that. I know they've got them all the way up in the Northwest, up the Northwest corner there, but I just don't know if they've ever gone to Canada. So JP now says they opened up a Whataburger right here in Columbia. Well, JP, it's your job to go in there, try it out, and check back in with us. Let us know what you thought. The prodigal stranger says a man, a plan, a canal, Panama. That is also, of course, a palindrome. As is, and by the way, check my math on this, as is the sentence, Satan, oscillate my metallic sonatas. Trust me, it works. Jay Klein, a little late today, but I'm here. Kayla McComber says, when I was a jailer in Fort Benton, Montana, no cell phones were allowed. It was placed in your personal items and locked up. Yeah, and so every now and then you hear about somebody who's in prison and somebody sneaks them a cell phone. And of course, they get caught. That's a bad thing. But the question is what they can do with it once they've got it in there. So Michael Ataz says, Hot and Now is bought out by Pepsi and they ran it into the ground. Doesn't surprise me. James Chamelik says there were two Carl's Jr. here. By the way, can anybody tell me why it was Carl's Jr. and not Carl Jr.'s? Did Carl actually have something that was called a junior? And that was so important as to put it in the name of the business? But I know that Carl's Jr., aren't they often associated with Hardee's also on some level? But now one of them is a Starbucks, says James. Daniel Kester says a palindrome is something spelled the same in both directions. Yes. So you can take the sentence or the word and flip it and it reads the same. So taco cat spelled backwards is still taco cat. Yeah, Dan Boyd says Tim Hortons has Canada covered. David Benner says no In-N-Out in Virginia. I don't even think, have they reached the Mississippi River yet? Because they're out west working their way east. Toadwalker says, just a heads up, you showed up in my feed twice as a YouTube featured live stream. Well, that's good. Thank you. I appreciate that. Old Paint 71 didn't want to stand in line for that long because he saw the lines in and out, even though he lived in San Diego for 2.5 years. Sergeant Bob says Culver's Butterburger ain't bad. Culver's is the only hamburger that I will say is actually in the same class as In-N-Out. But I ate at a Culver's last week, and I still don't think it is quite as good as In-N-Out. It's close. It's close. Their fries are good. Their ice cream is good. But Culver's, the whole thing is they customize it, make it right then and there. And it's they talk about better materials, better ingredients, and it does show. So good citizens as prison guards bring in contraband. We always hear stories about this, where some guy's in jail and he's got all kinds of privileges he's not supposed to have, and it's because he's become friends with the right people, so to speak. Lil Riggs I Am, maybe remember Burger Chef? Burger Chef. Yeah, one of those old school fast food places. Hey, Pat K says there was an eagle on my deck in Georgia, scary huge. And so I had my son count our cats. That's a good idea. I got a good friend named John who's an attorney in Anchorage, Alaska, and he's got a cabin someplace out in the mountains. And he lives near a place where there's a tide that comes in and out right next to where he lives. So he can sit on his deck and fish. And he says that when he fishes, he gets the fish, he cleans them right there because he's outside. And then, of course, he says the eagles have learned that when he's fishing, he's going to be cleaning pretty soon. They will come down and they will sit. They'll sit right on the railing 3 feet from, come on, dude, come on. So he sits there, he tosses it to them, and they just eat it. And so they've got this thing worked out. And he sent me pictures of him with a fish in his hand, and there's an eagle right here going, dude, give me my fish. RWP, Steve Lehto, what rental car company do you recommend? I don't officially recommend or endorse anybody, but I'm going to let you know right now. I've used Enterprise more than anybody else, and I've never had a problem ever with Enterprise. Never, ever, ever, ever. And once or twice I've had to rent somebody else because Enterprise wasn't available, and it wasn't as good. Enterprise. So I'm just letting you know it's my personal experience, but that's not like a paid announcement or anything like that. Mike Lehto says we have many bald eagles in the Lansing, Michigan area. Okay. Probably hunting the Red Cedar River or Lake Lansing. David Benner, barred owls are here, cousin of the spotted owl. I've got screech owls on my property, and I know that because I hear them, and they don't screech. That's the. I want to go find one and shake it by its little neck and go, why are you guys called screech owls? But I know it's not their fault. They make this weird sound. It's more like a horse whinnying. It's loud and it's unusual, and you know it when you hear it. You're like, oh, the screech owls are back. But I've never seen one. They're very, very shy little birds. So Dan Boyd says the big boys are going out of business in Cincinnati and Dayton, or most at least. Well, I know that there's a couple that I knew of that went out of business recently, although a couple that I know of are still in business, but they're franchises. So if the franchisee wants to hang in there, they can. But I think Big Boy is very dated and very, very old fashioned. So Padres' Enterprise accused him of stealing a truck. Did they really? Did they have you arrested? Good citizen notice that it is, in fact, an orange Solo Cup today. Did I have green last week? I think I did. Daniel Lopez, LLC, greetings from Finland. I assume that's not a Finnish name, though, but thank you for checking in. I love Finland. Haven't been there yet. Tom's is Carl's Jr. so named because they were a smaller version of their original Carl's Drive-In Barbecue restaurant. Okay, that makes sense. Because when I lived in California, I'd ask me, why is it Carl's Jr., not Carl Jr.'s? And everybody's like, oh, it's always what they called it. James Nordbeck, what's the most expensive restaurant you've eaten at in Metro Detroit? I'm not a big guy looking out for expensive meals. But the place I mentioned, J. Alexander's, it's not terribly expensive, but it's a little more expensive. There's one at Somerset. I've eaten there many times, but I love that place. I can't think of any more. Trying to remember the last one. I know I've eaten at a couple expensive restaurants in my life, but I normally am not into that. So Eric Ellis has put up an owl box. You'll be very entertained by the owls. Yes, I will. But I bought an owl box. I'm not making this up. I bought an owl box, and I've got a dead tree. It's a perfect place for it, right on the edge of my property line. I thought I'll put the owl box up right there because I can. It's very visible where it would be. The dead tree apparently is cherry or something very, very hard. Because I broke 2 drill bits trying to get a hole started for the screws to go through, and I got so frustrated I gave up on it. So maybe next year we'll see. Nathaniel Crapo, are you getting hungry with all that food talk? Not yet. Betty Boop grew up with A&W burgers and root beer. Yum. Actually, there's a couple A&Ws I know about in southeastern Michigan. They used to be everywhere, but there's still a few of them out there. Haven't eaten one in a while though. I'll make that clear. Taco Cats, I believe the furthest west in and out is in Dallas. You mean the furthest east? Because they started in California and they're working their way east. Sergeant Bob, we defendants can't afford to eat out. Attorneys took our eating out money. Pete Nikolich, cheapskate drill bits. Steve, no excuse. Well, the sad part is that there were the drill bits that came with the drill. And I'd never broken one before, and I broke 2 on that tree. So Zach, did you chop down the cherry tree? Be honest. You know what's really funny? I didn't. A lightning bolt split it in half. And I think I was home when it happened too. But there was a storm a little over a year ago. And windy and all kinds of stuff happening. And a lightning strike. And trying not to spill this. And I look out there, and there's a tree and snapped off. and I had to go with my chainsaw and clean up some stuff. And I thought that'd be a great place. That'd be a great place to put that owl box. And it didn't work yet. Doug Jones, did you have the drill in reverse? Well, if I did, it wouldn't have done anything. Oh, Robert Sherman, is this live? Can you imagine if it wasn't and I just answered your question like that? Joseph Mama says hummingbirds are cooler than owls. They show up every summer and you can see them. Owls are spooky and elusive. Yeah, but they both are cool in their own ways. Hummingbirds are like Harrier jump jets. They can fly frontwards and backwards and sideways and stuff. And then I've been sitting someplace and seeing them going, and it was like a fighter jet just went zooming across my line of vision. And I've seen different places where they also congregate, but the distances they travel are amazing. Owls, of course, generally hang around for the whole year, but they're nocturnal, and you don't see them very often unless something is out of whack. So, but I like them both a lot. 1970 Scout 800 literally just got Jimmy John's, and they forgot cheese on my $25.86 sandwich. Wait, you spent $25 on a sandwich? What, is it $20 worth of cheese or what? Gilbert says Daniel Lopez gets Steve a T-shirt. Hey, Gilbert, how you doing, my friend? Oh boy, Gilbert is one of the what I refer to as a friend of the show, where she's often here enough to where I recognize her icon and have to say hello to her. Although I do that a lot of people as well, but been around a while. Also, I think we have some common ancestral stomping grounds. I think she said that she grew up in Birmingham as well. So, Andy, New York 29 says hummingbirds are the only birds that can fly backwards. Hummingbirds also is a very large family of birds. There's a lot of different groups within the hummingbird family, and so they're very, very cool. Mark 324 says the drill bit's probably broke because of internal stress in the wood. Best way is to use a larger bit and peck drill. That is to drill a fraction of an inch, pull it back, and almost like a woodpecker, but slower. Pearl Rival says Wendy's spends the most money on the best burger, never frozen beef. Yeah, but I don't. Somehow it doesn't translate to me. I've had Wendy's before, and I always thought it's kind of like, eh. I also don't think hamburgers should be square. I think God intended hamburgers to be round. Daniel Lopez, where on earth is a sandwich worth $25? I'm not sure if it may have been a typo. Homestead Helper, we saw an owl the first week at our home. And see, I would view that as a good sign. That's what we call an omen, O-M-E-N. It's a good omen to see a wild animal like that, because it is so rare. Elliot Polach, hey, Steve, with an emoji. Doug Jones says, of course, you can eat a Krusty Burger with Homer if you trust what's in the burgers. Oh, blah, blah, blah. I was wondering if you had an Autobahn book. A book about the Autobahn? No, I don't. I've never read about the Autobahn. I know people who've driven on it, but never read a book about it. Dale Richardson says there's an A&W in Dexter, Michigan. I did not know that. Dexter, Michigan, of course, has a cider mill, and Dexter is one end of the Dexter Ann Arbor Half Marathon every year. I've run that race probably 5 or 6 times. Very, very cool. One of the best road races in Michigan. But Dexter's a really, really cool small town. Not far from Ann Arbor, as you might guess. It's within a half marathon of Ann Arbor. So. Oh. Elliot Polak says someone asked Steve about his experience about being lied to about frozen lasagna. I did a whole video about that. No need to ask him about it. Just go watch the video. Go onto my channel, type in, or just go to YouTube search bar and type in Steve Lehto restaurants, and spell it right, because the title's, I believe, Fun with Restaurants. Canadian Robot Lady says expensive sandwich is easily done in Canada. An A&W teen combo is nearly $20, but that's $20 Canadian, right? I'm not making fun of the money. I'm just thinking the conversion rate might. Whoa, who put that there? I'm just thinking that $20 Canadian might not seem like that much to us down here when we talk about dollars versus dollars. Wild Bill 57, originally from Southeast New England, used to fish out of a canoe, really missing red-winged blackbirds. Red-winged blackbirds can be mean. They can be vicious. They'll attack you. And I used to run on a trail past an area where they would nest, and those things will dive bomb you if you get too close to their nests. And that's they're cool though. They're cool, but they got the red epaulets on their wings. Little rigs I am. I like the teriyaki char burger at the Habit. It's quite messy but awesome. I have no idea what the Habit is. Is that a store, restaurant? 1970 Scout 800 says it was not a typo. The Hunter's Club sandwich with bacon in a gargantuan size is $25.86. Wow. It better be good. Fat Blue, good afternoon, Prof. I'll take it. Mexican Specs says if you have an owl at your house, you have fewer rodents. It's a good thing. Oh, no, I put a photograph up on Facebook yesterday. I just dropped something. And I was out on my property the other day, and who do I see running across in front of me but what angle? Hang on. And trust me, anyways, I had a possum. One of these I'll figure that out. I had a big fat possum run across in front of me, stopped, looked at me, and kept running. And I had all kinds of people weighing in about what I should do about it. It's like, no, you don't need to do anything about it. It's been living here, and its ancestors have been living here for far longer than me and my ancestors have been here. And all of these things in balance are good. So the possum's going to eat ticks and things like that. The owl's going to eat rodents. And all these different animals keep each other in balance and so on. And so, yeah. The funny thing is, I do have rodents on my property, but they're field mice. Technically, I think they're called meadow voles. Meadow voles. Look them up, not moles, but voles with a V. A meadow vole. It's a mouse about that big with a little short, stubby tail. And they're hilarious because they're tiny. And I've actually been mowing my lawn and seen them running across the grass, and it was running so slowly, I could just walk up to it and stop it. And I didn't mess with it. I took some pictures of it, let it go. But they're out there. And if you look up in books like how many there are per acre, you discover there's tons of them out there. As long as they stay out of the house and the garage, I don't care. Because I know that something's going to be eating them. They're eating something. It's all in balance. It's all in balance. Mark Miller says, looks like the possum is doing well. He's pretty chunky. Yeah, and the question is I think it's too early for one to be that pregnant if that was a pregnancy thing. So I don't know. Lil Whisper, love your channel, Steve. Thank you for all your cool stories. Leo G. Doss, why do victims of police misconduct often struggle to find lawyers? I've heard that, but I also know attorneys who do police brutality type cases, and they have no trouble finding cases. So I'm not quite sure. So sometimes I listen to myself. Do mothballs keep mice out of the garage? I don't know. I've heard things like that, but I don't know. I do know that I'm not, again, this is not advertisement, but if you go to Amazon and type in mousetraps, humane mousetraps, you'll find it's a little plastic box about that long. It's clear, you can see through it, and it's totally enclosed except on one side it's got a door that opens this way. And all you've got to do is put that box someplace where mice are. and put a piece of cracker with peanut butter up at the front. And the mice will come along, they'll go through the door, and when they go through the door closes behind them, they can't get back out. And years and years and years ago, I had trouble with mice at a house I had. And until I figured out where they're coming in from, I was just trapping them, and I didn't want to kill them. I would trap them and then take them far, far away and let them go. And that trap worked so well, I actually got 2 mice at the same time, where one mouse got in there, was eating the cracker. Another mouse climbed in behind him, like, no, I want that cracker. Dude, they're both in the mouse trap now. Yeah, 1820 KFTW says snakes keep mice out of your garage. And just like in The Simpsons, then the way you get rid of the needle snakes is you bring in the mountain gorillas. And then when the winter comes, it kills them. D Wood, I had a skunk die under my front porch. Very inconvenient. Skunks, skunks are interesting animals. I don't have any on my property. That's one animal. No skunks and no porcupines. Okay, and I'm fine with that. I'm not sure what porcupines contribute to nature. I just have known people who've had dogs that had to go to the hospital because they had quills in their mouths and so on. But skunks also. I appreciate all animals, but I don't want one wandering in my house stinking the place up. So. Robert Sherman says mothballs do indeed work very well at keeping mice away. Paul Davis says releasing that mouse off your property is illegal. Why? Because I'm transporting him. I know people complain when I said that I might transport a red squirrel or transplant one, but that was a long time ago. The Flatlander, when I store my Mustang GT for the winter, I use steel wool to stuff up my exhaust to keep the mice out. Mice actually get into your exhaust, or is that just a precaution? Like, has it ever actually happened? Because, I mean, mice climb around a lot, but I would think that they would get up in the engine compartment before they got into the exhausts. So, Southern Torin, I have a miniature schnauzer. Mice didn't want to come in this house, neither do roaches. Al Sanderson, save the chipmunks. I don't think I've got chipmunks. I'm trying to think about that now. I've got the little red squirrels, and I've got the bigger, more common squirrels. I don't think I've got chipmunks, at least not near the house. They might be out on the property somewhere. Johnny Knoxville, I don't think Steve was transporting mice across county lines. Yeah, it's transporting rodents across state lines for for lewd purposes that would be illegal under federal law. Arnman says mice ate my wiring harness of my work van twice. I've heard that there's certain wiring systems where the wire is made up out of some kind of organic material that smells and tastes good to mice. So you got to be careful about that. Yeah, Robert Sherman says you get the spicy tape. You put it on your electrical wiring to keep them from chewing on it. So, Dan Boyd says you see mouse nests fly out of the exhaust of cars which have sat for decades when they're started for the first time. No, it is amazing where mice can get. I've mentioned it probably before that I had a barbecue grill in my garage and I took it in for the wintertime. And I went to put it out for the first time in the spring and I opened the lid up and there's a big mouse nest in there. And I'm looking and all of a sudden I see this mouse come over and like look up and he looks at me like, dude, close the lid, And I'm like, hey, I got news for you, man. I'm about to fire this thing up. You got to move. And so I rolled it over to a bush and I tipped it and he got the message and he jumped out. But can you imagine if I hadn't looked and just fired it up? It would have been ugly. So Brian B had squirrels go under his car and chew the brake lines. Yeah, see, and squirrels are rodents. Rodents chew on things. They have an urge to chew constantly. As Ryan Holtzinger points out, mouses' teeth never stop growing, which allows them to gnaw through many materials. And they've got to gnaw at things to keep those teeth sharp and wear them down. Doug Jones, yeah, fresh meat in the barbecue. That's real fresh. James, any chance the Dodge Daytona Plymouth Superbird book will be back in print? Gave my copy to a friend. He's not giving it back. I'm thinking about it. I may have to put it back in print myself, meaning I have to pay to have them printed myself. My publisher doesn't think that they can sell enough of them. I'm like, I can. I don't know about you guys, but I can. So, Wandering Emsley. Ooh, hi, Steve. Hello. David Peterson had a squirrel attempt to store acorns on his exhaust manifold, which caused an interesting aroma shortly thereafter. I a couple of homes back had a row of pine trees that were on a property line, perfectly on the property line. And I didn't mind the pine trees at all, but my neighbor pointed out that there was a little red squirrel all day long. You'd see him running up and down these pine trees, and I just thought, okay, he's you know working while the sun shines, preparing for a long winter. And my neighbor said, "Let me show you something." And he had this little outbuilding, and up in the attic of the outbuilding, this little red squirrel was just piling up mountains of pine cones. And he'd haul them all out and he'd seal up the hole. And a week later, he's chewed another hole and he's back in there piling up the pine cones. Oh. Long black train. I live in Northwest Florida, also known as LA, meaning Lower Alabama. Yeah, that's the funny thing about Florida. You got the big main part, peninsula sticks down, and then you got that panhandle over there on the left. And isn't part of the panhandle even a different time zone? Like, that's just strange to me to think about, that Florida can be over here or down here. And in between is nothing but, the Gulf of Mexico. So, Jay Klein says you got common European lizards in Cincinnati because someone released about a dozen of them decades ago. Yeah, if you go to Florida, Southern Florida, the Miami area or any place in that down there, iguanas are everywhere. Big ones, big, snout to tail, both hands off the camera on purpose. Big iguanas. And on rare cold snaps and they're up in trees, they fall out of the trees because they freeze and they can't hang on anymore. And they're just everywhere, and they reproduce like rabbits. They're just everywhere. So, yeah, Brian Fulton says it's Floribama. Sergeant Bob, haven't got a deer yet, thinking all the squirrels are stealing my deer corn. Long Black Train says the Panhandle Central and the dongle is in Eastern. Oregon expat, good morning, Steve. Hello again from Germany. Mouse steaks, rodent roast. There wouldn't be a lot of meat there, would there? Not a lot. Oh, minor number 9 pre-sale for the Daytona coffee book. I got to do some math. In fact, a couple of years ago, I talked to my publisher and said, look, let's put this thing back in print. I can sell them. It's an expensive book. It's oversized. It's high gloss. It costs a lot of money to print. And I said, how about if I pay to do it? And they gave me a number, which was doable. And I just got caught up in some other stuff. So I might have to do it. Doug Jones, do you have raccoons in the U.S.? Yes, we invented raccoons. I know you guys have got them too. Canada. Raccoons are cool. I've raised raccoons on more than one occasion. They're all over the internet now on TikTok and Instagram. You actually don't want to raise one as a pet. They once they hit to be adult, they're not as cute and cuddly as they are when they're little kids. But you can raise them and let them go because quite often what happens is they get orphaned because the fathers aren't around and the mother's raising like 3 babies and the mother gets hit by a car. And next thing you get 3 baby raccoons wandering and go, hey, where'd mom go? And that's what happens. So I've done that. Very, very cool. But yeah, we do. So Johnny Knoxville, do it and make a profit. Here's the thing. If I do it, that means I'm selling the books myself, which means I'm going to put up a video and go, hey, everybody, I got this book. And what'll happen is 3 days later, when my hand is so sore from signing books, I can't move it anymore. I'm going, why did I do this? Because don't forget, when I did the American Murder Houses book, the most recent time, I sold 700 of them in 2 days. And so, I mean, I'm certain I could sell a couple hundred of the Wing Car book, but every one involves me doing a transaction with Square, signing, addressing, all that stuff. So, Klaus Fisher, don't you have print on demand? Yeah, but it's not the same as the good type of printing. Johnny Knoxville, you don't have a secretary? I can't make her sign my books. Fly Chomper Fly says some publishers have a contract that prohibits anyone else from publishing it. Well, in my case, if they keep it in print, I can't publish it. But the second they take it out of print, I can. I could take it to another publisher right now if I wanted to. But the point is that it's a very, very large, i.e., oversized, like coffee table book with 450 high resolution photographs in it. It has to be printed in 4 colors on all pages. So that's an extremely expensive project. And so to get that done properly, I'd want it done on a traditional printing press by a good publisher. And so I can do that with me paying the bill right now, unless I can talk my publisher into doing it. But because the thing is, if I do it myself, I can't get into bookstores as easily as they can. So, Toads Walker, just make a stamp out of your signature. That only resolves one of the 16 steps, though. Mrs. Teresa, 1999, says you did such a good job with the American Murder House books. Well, thank you. Red Fox Mad says, do you have a website that you sell books and merchandise? I would love to buy some more of your books and possibly other merchandise. You can go to Zazzle and find T-shirts and mugs. Like that mug right there is off of Zazzle. But Zazzle's basically a scam because they charge you a monthly service fee, and if you don't sell enough stuff, you never make any money. So if you want a T-shirt or a mug, look at Zazzle. But if you want one of my books that's currently in print, just email me and say, Steve, do you have a copy of this book laying around? Because right now I've got a couple of the Tucker books. I've got a couple Turban Car books. I got a couple American Murder House books, and I'll do a deal with you. But I'm not right now doing the thing where hey, everybody, I'm doing a special deal. So. Michael Johnson. Hi, Steve. Mike from Westland. Glad to see you, my friend. And Gilbert. Yeah, I don't have a wife who can do that for me. Doug Jones says, have the book pre-printed with your signature, but the problem is that I personalize them. So I couldn't have one that says, hey, Doug, thanks for helping me out. Or, hey, Doug, hope you enjoy the book. Lone Dragon, do you sell fresh Lehto slaw? No, but I did consider doing an April Fool's video where I do nothing but a cooking show discussing how to prepare Lehto slaw, which I might still do. Don't know how it'll be funny or not, but I'll try it. 182Q KFTW auto pen. You need an auto pen. Are they programmable? Can you get them to sign different things? Long Black Train. My grandmother was an author, Anne Louise Grimm. Publishing and printing was a nightmare. Ronald Burge, Lehto Slaw. Yeah, that's what some people read when they see the word Lehto's Law run together, like Lehto'sLaw.com. So, Jay Klein, did you get my email about my dad's fight with the USPS? Yes, I did. I read the story. I might do a video about it. I'm not quite sure. But Jay's dad's been in a years long fight with the feds about his mailbox. Carl's Corner High, Steve. Better late than never. That's true. Neurodivergent Utopia. Thank you for a terrific year, Steve. By the way, Ronald Burge, I should call him out on this. Ronald Burge just checked in there by saying Lehto's Law. Ron's a good friend of mine, and I recommend him to people because I get phone calls. People say, Steve, I bought a defective RV. It's driving me crazy. Can you help me? And I say, I don't do RV cases anymore. But my friend Ron Burge does. And Ron Burge is one of the rare attorneys on the face of this planet who will actually take an RV case. I mean, in California, some attorneys might because there's a different lemon law there that covers RVs to some extent. But in Ohio or Michigan or Indiana, they're hard to come by. Mr. Ronald Burge, give him a call. He's in Ohio. You can look him up. He's on the internet. Jerry Bell, just finished your Crazy Town series. How many fellow lawyers have you been involved in their discipline? I have personally been involved with 3 attorneys who have been disciplined. And that was the question. How many? The correct answer is 3. Sarge Marine, I believe what you do is important enough. When I saw us, I would drop in. Happy New Year. And to you, my friend. Thank you very much. Lone Dragon says it could be worse. I saw someone the other day whose name is Dan Who Reviews, and it looks kind of like his Dan Whore Views. That's when you have to look at. But see, I've used Lehto's Law. I used it as early as I think 1993 or 94. And I've had the URL Lehto'sLaw.com for almost that length of time. And I've known that it looks like Lehto Slaw or Lehto's Law. I knew that, but I decided that's a minor little thing. So Ronald Burge, I've bought every one of Steve's books, like the Turban Book Best. Now, see, Ron, here's the problem. You're a friend of mine. I would have given them to you. Because you don't understand. When someone calls me and they go, I'm in Ohio and I've got a bad RV. Can you help me? I go, no, but I bet Ron can. You're doing me a favor when you help somebody out. But I appreciate that too. Art asked, my wife used to illustrate kids' books. The business is now a pain. Children's books are also a problem. There's children's books and poetry are 2 markets that if you told me like I want to become a professional poet, I'd say I hope you don't plan on eating or being able to pay the rent. So, Mike Torello, thanks, Steve. Happy New Year. Got to run. Well, thank you for hanging out while you did. I appreciate that. Canadian Robot Lady, I'm surprised the coleslaw company hasn't approached you for a salad endorsement yet. Are there actually coleslaw companies out there? Robert Sherman, coincidentally, I found your channel, Small World. You defended me as a public defender well over 30 years ago. You've inspired me in case law. I'm really liking law and the study of it. That I find fascinating because I did do public defense for a couple of years, about 30 years ago. And I mention that every now and then, nobody ever believes me. So if you want to, please shoot me a note and just remind me. Shoot me an email and just say, hey, Steve, I sent you a note during the live stream and you said to send you an email. I'd love to chit chat with you about that and what we did, because I handled quite a few cases, but they're primarily in 3 or 4 different courts. So if you remind me, say it was in this court, it's gonna be like, oh my, I remember that. So very, very cool. Jay Klein's my grandmother self-published 2 poetry books. My dad had a publisher, has a publisher. Well, interestingly enough, my great grandfather wrote poetry, and in Finnish, in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. And what's fascinating about it is that he actually owned his own printing press, and so he'd actually print them up himself, and then he'd bind them himself, and he'd ride around on a bicycle and sell them in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. And my mother, in later years, gathered up copies of all of his poetry and translated it into English, and then published a book of my grandfather's poetry, Finnish on one side, English on the other. And it's fascinating, but it's also such a weird little niche thing that unless you're in the Finnish language, it wouldn't be that interesting to you. But a lot of it, he's talking about current events in like 1900, like 1920. So it's very interesting. Lee Van Ruler, I've listened to nearly all of your presentations and thoroughly enjoyed the archive as they're still very informative. Keep it up and Happy New Year. I appreciate that, my friend. Thank you very much. Brian Fortune says, Steve, that's it. You could be the spokesperson for Big Coleslaw. It could be worth tens of dollars in Canadian. For all you know, I already am. For all you know, I'm working behind the scenes right now, keeping down all of the competition. Forrest guy, my wife thinks you might know of Lehto's pasties. Any connection? Yes, I know of them. No connection. So if you cross the Mackinac Bridge and hang a left on US 2, about 5 miles out, you pass a place on the southern side of the road called Lehto's Pasties. They've been there since the 1940s. I've eaten there many, many times, countless times, but there's no relation. I've spoken to the owners many times. They also have another location in downtown St. Ignace that they opened up a few years ago, but no relation. Every year I get inundated with photographs that people took and said, hey, Steve, check it out. I just saw this. I just saw this. Are you related? I'm like, no, but I know about them. So thank you. Sergeant Bob says, you got to ask, does your slaw have pineapple? It would have to have something in it, but I think pineapple would make it Hawaiian, wouldn't it? And of course, half the country would hate me. Shouting at clouds says coleslaw and a barbecue pork sandwich is mandatory. Turks One asks about pasties. Many people don't know this. Pasties are a meat pie. They're not Finnish. They're actually Cornish, but they're not really well known all across the country, but different areas. But especially in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, they were really popular in the days of mining because a guy could take one that was cooked at home into work, and if you could warm it up there, even eat it at room temperature is edible. So Southern Torrent didn't so-called Hawaiian pizza actually get started in Canada. I believe it did. At least I've heard that. Mark 324 says pasties are an Upper Peninsula staple, and that's quite true. So Lehto's pasties are quite good, as are Muldoon's in Munising. If you're ever up there, check it out. Wade Pittenger says Vogon poetry is terrible. I believe it was the third worst in the universe. I believe the worst poetry in the universe was written by a young lady from England, as I recall. But that's, of course, a reference to Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Ember Miss 69 Valerie Ann are discussing a Wikipedia page, which I do not endorse. I would not encourage anybody to look at it. There's a story there, but I'm concerned with the Barbra Streisand effect. If I talk about it, it'll draw more attention to it. So I'd rather not talk about that. Carl's Corner says last live. No, Steve's New Year's Eve marathon up next. I might do a show on New Year's Eve. You never know. I might. I was thinking about doing a countdown, maybe the top 10 videos of the year or something. Southern Torrance's fourth worst is Dada's poetry about his cat Spot. Did Dada write poetry? Wouldn't surprise me. Um, James, pointless points for referencing Vogon poetry. Skylar Perone, what up, Steve? Brian Ford 42. Yeah, that's the answer. But what was the question? Sig 226, poetry about that guy from Nantucket. Low rigs I am, life, the universe, everything. James Chamelik, is the book you co-wrote with the person who's in prison still in print? Yes, it is. And in fact, I think I've got copies of that book too. But that book's available wherever fine books are sold. So Ronald Burge, here I thought that was pasties, like I heard about it at a burlesque show. What's funny is somebody a while back sent into Jay Leno an article that had the word pasties in the headline. And if you read it as pasties, it was funny. And I don't think he knew that pasties was a foodstuff. But Jay Brown, hi, Steve. What a pleasant surprise. Happy New Year to you and your family. Embermist 69, I'll leave the rest unsaid. That said, what is normal New Year's Eve like for you? I've never been big on staying up that late, unless I do a live stream, which I might do. I might do a live stream. I don't know. We'll see. It's one of those things that we talk about, and like 18 people would show up for. So, shouting at clouds says YouTube keeps muting my live stream almost randomly. Huh. Daniel Kester, next Wednesday is my birthday. Next Wednesday. Is that January 1st? Is your birthday on the 1st or the 8th? When you say next. Steve, here's a tongue twister, crushed Swiss wristwatches. I don't know about tongue twister, but it's a scary concept. James Chamelik, is it possible to get a copy of the Detroit Free Press sent to Canada? I don't even know how often they publish that thing anymore. I mean, I know they publish, but I think they Free Press and the News. I forgot if they take turns or how they do that, but they don't even publish 7 days a week anymore. I know that one of the last articles written about me in the paper, I did get hard copies of, but it's hit or miss because now it's mostly online, I think. Sergeant Bob, there goes another year you'll never get back. Oh, boy. Johnny Knoxville says, I asked the watchmaker who worked at my Luminox if he had to pick one brand of watch. He said he'd pick Omega. Really? Okay. I mean, Omegas are good watches. It's funny because, if you think about watches, you can get yourself a $4 digital watch that keeps better in time than anything. But it's more a matter of how often you're going to wear it. Will it work? That kind of thing. Ed G, Balmy 55 in the Poconos. Hello, Steve. Ant Combus, I won't be around for a New Year's live. I'll be at the Boot Drop in downtown Prescott, Arizona. So many places drop things. Like there's the ball drop in New York City, right? And then they have all kinds of other things being dropped in other places. So blah blah blah. How do you go about getting a campaign started? They have cars come with stainless steel brake lines. That's the kind of thing I don't understand why they don't. It couldn't. Well, back. I was gonna say it couldn't cost that much, but the problem with the car companies, they can save a penny per car. They go, well, it's a penny per car over 1 million cars. That's ugh. And next thing you know, they're doing things like putting plastic hinges on the door, on the glove box doors and stuff. So I don't know. It's unfortunate because they should. Mark Miller likes Longines. Didn't Longines used to advertise on television? Seems to ring a bell. David Zernansky has been exercising his right to remain silent. Oops, sorry. Fly Chomper Fly, did you mention race car when talking palindromes? No, I didn't. Does that work if you say race car, Taco Cat, race car? I think it would. Chris, could you please help vlogger Travis Heinz constantly being harassed simply for traveling with his car and living out of his car, which isn't a fancy RV? I don't know who he is. He's never contacted me, and I don't generally go around looking for people to help. Only because I have some people coming to me for help. I don't have time. Southern Torn, the ball drop in New York City just hasn't been the same without Dick Clark. The sad part is they still call it Dick Clark's Rockin' Eve with Ryan Seacrest. Oh boy. Lee Van Ruler, do you have a count of how many T-shirts you've received? No, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds. 500. If you said, Steve, give us an over under where you're not sure. I think 500 might be the over under, but I think I'd be tempted to go over on that. It may be closer to 600. I don't know. Daniel Kester's birthday is, in fact, January 1st. And I'll tell you right now, Daniel's parents, it dawned on them a couple days later that if he had arrived a day earlier, could have been used as a tax deduction in the prior year. Oh, two tires, my Speedmaster is my pride and joy of my small watch collection. Ironman says ditches are flooding here in southeastern Michigan. Where are you in southeast Michigan? I'm looking out right now. I do see rain, and I do see standing puddles of water in my yard, but I don't see anything flooding just yet. So I'll have to keep my eyes out, I guess. Good Citizen Timex. Oregon Expats, good night, Steve, and all of you fellow followers. Wishing everyone a guten Rutsch ins neues Jahr, which is German for a smooth slide into the new year. Be safe and well. Mark Miller, what's the liquid refreshment of the day today? This would be Gatorade. Gatorade. This is a yellow Gatorade, whatever, yellow green Gatorade, whatever flavor that might be. Dan Boyd says stainless brake lines are more difficult to seal because the metal doesn't crush as easily. Okay. Lyle McCullough checking in from K-Pac, which of course is also a palindrome. And birthplace of Preston Tucker, I kid you not. Ironman, southwest of Dundee. Okay, so that's getting closer down, very, very south, almost approaching a state line, right? Sort of. Melissa Thompson, do you prefer your old Explorer or do you like the fancy new stuff? I hate the fancy new stuff. Current Explorer, the brand new one, I've got to shut off that auto start stop, which I hate. I'm stopped at a light and the engine dies. I'm like, auto start stop. I would never get used to it, so I just shut it off. It's got a bunch of other things. It still has that warning when I change lanes or if I turn down a dirt road. Driver might be drowsy, perhaps pull over and take a nap. Warning pops on the dashboard to tell me to take a nap. No, I'm driving someplace. I haven't got time to take a nap. It's just too annoying. I liked the simpler, easier times with the old Explorer, which I drive often as well. I alternate back and forth. So, Vinny Sluga says, "Happy birthday, Happy New Year, Steve. My birthday is coming up." Very good. Bill Milligan, ever thought about doing a book on the Jensen Motor Company? I'm not familiar with them. Don't know anything about them. Kevin Thomas, it would take a federal regulation to force automakers to install stainless steel brake lines, or they could do it on their own at their own costs, similar to putting in stainless steel exhausts. They could do it. It's just, but forcing them to do it. Southern Torrance is the only Dundee that I know about is the crocodile kind. Knife. It's not a knife. Call it a knife. Oh, boy. Mark Miller, perhaps trade in the newest Explorer for a used one. No, I've got two Explorers. I've got an 02 and a 24. And the new one's got all kinds of new stuff on it, and the old one doesn't. So I go back and forth. Wade Pittenger enjoyed the video. Please stop diagnosing me. It must have worked because the diagnoses have stopped. I have not gotten a crank email from anybody going, hey, Steve, I think you got, and then fill in a blank of some illness they think I've got. So Homestead Helper's got to go, but thanks for the live stream. Have a great day and New Year. You too, my friend. GW, planned obsolescence. Dan Boyd says a Jensen Interceptor came with a 440, I think. Jensen Healy did not. Jensen Healy. I've heard the name Healy before. Good citizen, speaking of stainless steel cars, I heard the Tesla trucks are rusting. I'm seeing more and more of those now. I still don't care for them. I class it right up there with an Aztec with respect to its styling, but hey, taste is so subjective that if you like them, knock yourself out. Jay Klein, I've disabled all that stuff in my 2019 Audi, except the stop start, which cannot be permanently disabled. And that's the problem, is that to disable that, you have to actually go in and do things that probably mess with the warranty or other things that would cause trouble. JP says stainless steel brake lines are very brittle, i.e. what the other guy said about not being able to compress. So he's doing a brake job right now, and a GP would know. Yeah, Bob says, I think there could be a subscription available to turn off all that stuff. It would be $19.95 a month. Can you imagine? They put stuff on your car and make you use it unless you pay them to turn it off. That's a subscription I'd support. Okay. Doug Van Osdell. Hello, Steve. Thank you for checking in, my friend. James Chamelik says, in the Hitchhiker's Guide, the live action series, you mean the television series on the BBC? At Milliways, the bodyguard was played by David Pruce, a.k.a. Darth Vader. I did not know that. It's been so long since I saw that version of it. But I at one point in time, I'll admit it's been a little while, but at one point in time, I'd read all the books, heard all the BBC shows, and then watched the BBC shows. And you have to understand that all three of them are different from one another. Even though Douglas Adams was involved in all of it, it just happened to work out. And I've even read interviews with him where he explained why it came out the way it did, with certain stories changing their order and so on. But it was fascinating. But the TV show was obviously so low budget that it didn't work very well. The movie they eventually made wasn't bad, but there was just something about it that didn't quite work. I think I was just expecting it to be so much better that it couldn't live up to that in my head. So. Gilbert says, my 5-year-old phone is so new, my 15-year-old SUV can't connect to it. Paul's YouTube channel, good evening from Belgium, the country not as in the Hitchhiker's Guide. Okay. James Chamelik, are pasties like a chicken pot pie? Sort of, but not chicken. They tend to have beef in them. But of course, I think you can now get a chicken pasty. So sometimes I listen to myself. Did you ever watch The Prisoner? It's been a while, but I'm familiar with it. But it's been quite a while. Quite a while. Southern Torrent Douglas Adams wrote for the Doctor Who back in the 70s. Yeah. He wrote a bunch of other stuff too. He wrote some really cool books later. Both the Dirk Gently series, The Long Dark Tea Time of the Soul. It's one of the greatest titles of all time. And then also he wrote a book, Last Chance to See, where he traveled the world in an attempt to get out and see animals on the verge of extinction before they were gone. And it's just him traveling the world. It's a fascinating book. Mrs. Teresa, 1999. If you come in July to the Geneva, New York cruising night, bring your books that you can sell. Well, there's an idea. Gas money. Steve says Douglas Adams was the Monty Python of science fiction. I learned that on the Final Jeopardy. I've never actually heard that phrase before, but I can see that comparison. Although I think Monty Python had more of an edge of absurdity to some of it, where they were literally doing things that were absurd. But I did watch The Holy Grail again. It was on the BBC America 2 nights ago, and watched it and hadn't seen it probably about a year. And there is just so much happening. Every time I see it, I'm like, I forgot about that. And the funniest part of all was I looked something up on IMDb, and I like to look at, if I'm watching a movie I've seen many times, I'll go to IMDb and look up the goofs, the things that happen in the movie that are mistakes. And quite often it'll be like, character puts a glass down over here, and the next scene it's over here because they did several takes and they forgot where the glass was, that kind of thing. And the goofs that people were listing in Monty Python's Holy Grail were things like, the movie is set in 932, and yet they reference this thing that happened in 1156. It's a comedy, and it's not supposed to make sense, okay? And so if you're going to call those out as goofs, somebody actually said that one of the characters is reading Aramaic from left to right when you'd be reading it actually from right to left. And I watched that scene, and his head's moving both ways. Like, how do you know which way he's reading it? Oh, boy. So, Lowell Riggs I am says, my father took me to see The Life of Brian in the theater when I was 8. Wow. Hey, Gilbert, we talked about drive-in movie theaters a couple shows back, and I mentioned a drive-in theater out towards the West Bloomfield area, and I'm pretty sure I saw one of the Holy Grails out at one of those. So, good times. Dan Boyd, okay, I'm back on my computer. Dime Bag Coins, merry, happy, everyone. Thank you very much, my friend. Jerry Brown, 'tis but a scratch. Yeah, and somebody pointed out in the goofs in Monty Python, the bridge guarded by the Black Knight is only covering a stream about this far across. He could have gone and just stepped over that. Why didn't he? Because there wouldn't have been a scene with those guys fighting to death like that. Oh, boy. Good citizen. The Beatles were involved in the financing of Monty Python. I believe some of the guys from Led Zeppelin were too. I think there's a whole bunch of people in the rock and roll world who agreed to do that because they just thought, hey, these guys should have their vision not tampered with. And we've seen that. And we now know that it's we now know that it's a good thing they did that. So believe in yourself, so Steve. Because of Monty Python, I've often wondered what elderberries smelled like. What I would like, if you said, Steve, is there anything that we could show you behind the scenes? I'd love to see a scene in the writing room where these guys are sitting down going, okay, there's going to be these knights up on a wall guarding a castle, but they speak French for some reason. and they're going to be yelling at some knights down the ground who speak English. So they'll be speaking English, but with a really heavy French accent. And they'll be yelling this idiotic and stupid insults back and forth. What will they say? Because number one, the stuff they came up with was so funny. But they probably discarded a lot of stuff that was either also funny or was too dirty or too oh, but it's so good. I remember I went and saw it at the theater the first time I saw it. Had no idea what to expect. And before the credits were done rolling, I was in pain from laughing so hard. Just the opening credits. Oh, a moose bit my sister once. Mark Miller, I'm French. That's why I have this outrageous accent, you silly king. Go away or I shall taunt you a second time, James. Bill Milligan, Terry Gilliam had a history master's, and a lot of Monty Python and the Holy Grail was historically accurate with the peasant scenes. But what they're complaining about in the goofs was that some of the stuff was incorrect. Like, for instance, at one point, Arthur goes, "This guy's dynamite." And somebody goes, dynamite wasn't invented until Alfred Nobel invented it many centuries later. Oh, God. Brian Bloomer, what's your favorite case you handled this year? The problem in my cases is the vast majority of them are all alike. I haven't had any unusual cases in a while. They're literally just somebody bought a defective car, manufacturer agrees to buy it back from me. So, I mean, that's the bread and butter of my practice. So I got to like those cases, but none of them stand out as like, this one was so much better than the other ones. So, birds are free. Moose bites can be pretty nasty. I'm surprised nobody complained about like the typography of the opening credits as a goof. Oh boy, Darren Padilla, I love your videos, Lehto. Lil Riggs I Am says you got to see some of the props, the Museum of Pop Culture in Seattle. Cool. The prodigal stranger bring forth the holy hand grenade of Antioch. Read to us from the book of armaments. What of says George Harrison funded the movie Life of Brian as he said, I want to see this movie. I'll mortgage my house to fund it. Dan Boyd says, wait, Nobel, as in the Nobel Peace Prize invented dynamite? Yes. That's the irony of it. Some people said he did that specifically because he was trying to somehow make amends for the things that have been done with his other work. Ajinkya, have you ever submitted amicus briefs to the Supreme Court? I assume you mean federal Supreme Court, as in the Supreme Court of the U.S.? No, I have not. No, I have not. I have submitted not amicus briefs. I've submitted briefs on behalf of clients to the federal courts of appeal. And in Michigan, I have filed a petition for cert to the state Supreme Court, and I've filed briefs and argued cases in front of the Michigan Court of Appeals. But the state Supreme Court did not accept the one case I filed. So, Long Black Train says the Naked Gun series has nothing on Airplane or Monty Python. But the Naked Gun series is still fantastic for what it does. I just recently saw Naked Gun #1 and Airplane about a week or two earlier. And those are also classics in their own rights. Even Airplane 2, which wasn't even done by the same group of people, still did amazingly well. And the Naked Gun series, the opening scene, and I hate to admit this, with O.J. Simpson, where he kicks his leg through the door on that boat, and he wants to surprise these guys, but instead his leg gets stuck through the door, and his leg is doing this, and finally he swings the door open, and he has a badge. He goes, "Okay, you're under arrest. Drop your guns." And like 15 people have got guns pointed at him, and one guy drops his gun. Everybody looks at the guy like, "What are you doing?" And then he's going through all the different things. He puts his hand on the burner, and the window falls on him. And then he puts his face in the cake, and he puts his wet paint. They put so much thought into each of those scenes that it's hilarious. I can watch those over and over again. Kurt's Corner, your favorite Factor recipe. There are, and I wouldn't say all of them, but they do a couple chicken ones that are really, really good. And it's been a little while, and I'll admit I don't study them. I just cook them and eat them. But I like the chicken ones. I like those ones a lot. Dan Boyd says Monty Python is British, Airplane is American, apples and oranges, both enjoyable. Yeah, there's that too. There's that too. But there's no question, like Monty Python's Holy Grail. There's nothing like it other than the Monty Python show itself. And the same is true with Airplane. When it came out, there's nothing like it either. And so, it was not just that somebody made a funny movie, but somebody made a funny movie that was so radically different than what had come before it. And Mark 324 reminds us that Airplane is filled with dramatical actors who were maxing out the deadpan humor. And so Rex Kramer and Leslie Nielsen. Oh boy. Two Tires reminds us the Holy Grail will be 50 years old in April of this upcoming year. Wow. Long Black Train. What do you think of Benny Hill? I love Benny Hill. I only saw him in America on Channel 56, which is PBS out of Detroit. And I think it may have been heavily edited and chopped up, and it was not like brand new. But Benny Hill, again, there's people who just didn't like him, okay? Benny Hill was unique, and he had a certain sensibility about what he did that you'd recognize, oh, that's Benny Hill. Like whether or not he was on screen, you'd go, this is Benny Hill. And it was so interesting that a guy came along with that personality who managed to do that so perfectly that I always thought Benny Hill was a fascinating guy. And by the way, in real life, he's a fascinating guy too. David Persons reminds us of Kentucky Fried Movie. That's where it all started. Oh, I saw Kentucky Fried Movie at a drive-in theater back in the day too. Bernadine Sackinger, what about Black Adder? I've not seen a lot of that, no. And stop calling me Shirley. G Keyman 565. Brian Bloomer, how fast do you think Benny Hill will get canceled today? In America or in England? Because I'm not sure if in England it would be quite that bad, but you never know. Doug Van Osdell says, oh, yeah, thank you. I've tried the factory meals, and I love them. I take them on the road with me. Oh, cool. Cool. John Nowak Jr., hi. Better late than never. That is true, my friend. Somebody else logged in at 5 minutes after we started and said that. Stops Pam and Dam says Airplane is almost a scene-for-scene redo of a movie called 0 Hour. I know that's where they got the idea from. I believe they actually bought the rights to the movie 0 Hour because they were parodying it. They wouldn't have needed to do that most likely, but because they followed the plot line identically, they thought, well, let's just do it this way and we'll take care of it. But yeah, it's a spoof of an actual movie. And one of the things they did, for instance, is in the movie Airplane, every time they show the jet from outside, it's making engine noises, like it's got piston engines. And I think in the movie 0 Hour, it was a piston-powered airplane. And they just thought it'd be funny to use the soundtrack of the wrong plane every time they showed the plane. Oh, D. Woods' Channel 50 used to play Benny Hill. Okay, WKBD out of Detroit. That's not public television. I might be, it's a long time ago because I know that Monty Python was on Channel 56, But Benny Hill may have been on channel 50 for a period of time there too. So, yeah, Catholic high school girls in trouble. Devin Bound. That was a skit inside Kentucky Fried Movie. Catholic school girls in trouble. Lone Dragon Top Secret. Skeet surfing. Top Secret is pretty good. I wouldn't quite put it up there with Airplane, but it's in the same genre. And if you haven't seen it, it's worth seeing. I saw it again a couple months ago. It popped up and I watched it for a little while. So I always enjoyed that one too. Eric Ellis has watched Benny Hill on channel 50. Okay, I may have in my mind lumped it in there and said that it was like PBS, but that's the Monty Python. D Woods is at Springsteen saying 57 channels, nothing on. Yeah, now with cable it's like 400 channels, nothing on. Fred Hoyt, the jerk. I think somebody asked about that last week. Was that last week we talked about the jerk? Saw that at the theater also. Steve Martin was brilliant in that. So, it's sad. I've got, one of those things that brings in hundreds of channels, and the vast majority of them I just skip over. There's like 5 channels I watch, and then occasionally I do things like I look for movies on the movie channels. But I mean, there's just dozens and dozens of like shopping channels and just stupid stuff like that. So Zafar Syed's howdy from Chicago. Hope you're doing well. Just knew that Monty Python and or Airplane 1 or 2 would be mentioned today. Try all of the above. Prince Albert says we can't talk about parody movies at least mentioning Hot Shots. Hot Shots and Hot Shots Part 2 are both good. The scene where Charlie Sheen is going down the river and Martin Sheen's going up the river and they're both narrating in their heads. And then as they go by, I loved you in Wall Street. Oh my. Bob Blah Blah says Hot Shots was a valiant effort. It was good. Oh boy. Daniel Kester says that in Airplane, the credits, it says that the autopilot was played by Otto as himself. Oh boy. Eric L. Robin Hood Men in Tights will make you laugh too. That's a Carl Reiner film, right? Yeah, that and he likewise has a whole thing where his stuff comes across a little differently as well. Devin Bound, Steve Martin ad-libbed a lot of the jerk. I wonder about how much of that is. But I can tell you that I found on the internet a while back, I don't know if it's still there or not, but I printed out a copy for myself. Somebody had a working manuscript for the screenplay of The Holy Grail. And somebody had actually gotten a copy of one that had been used on the set and noted when lines were taken out, when lines were added in. And it was fascinating because there were 3 or 4 recurring jokes that they removed for whatever reason. So, for instance, at the very, very end, where they show a boat and then they realize there's a castle out there right before the end of the movie. And somebody goes, there's a castle. And the other person goes, it's just a model. But they didn't use that in the movie. And apparently there was 3 or 4 times in the movie where somebody go, look, a castle, or look this. And somebody else go, it's just a model. And they cut that out for whatever reason. But the point is that in the original script, it was there. And there were entire scenes that they cut out. And I realized that they probably do it because of time, because some of them were quite funny. But there you go. Yeah, Jay Brown, let's take some pictures, boys. The reporters just started taking photos off the walls. Canadian Robot Lady, of course, says Spinal Tap. And Spinal Tap, of course, is legendary. And again, it's one of those movies where we've gotten things that have become part of our part of our lore. This amplifier goes to 11. Now, Feral Kitty says, I love Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas about Hunter S. Thompson. Uh, are we talking about the one with Johnny Depp? Because I've read Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. I've read almost everything by Hunter S. Thompson. And they made a couple movies about him, including one with, I think, Bill Murray playing him, which didn't come out very well. And I wasn't a big fan of the Johnny Depp one either. And the weird thing about it is that if you read Johnny Depp, if you read Hunter S. Thompson stuff like Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, the way the guy writes, it's the voice in which he writes that makes what he's saying so interesting. It's not what he did. I mean, he claims that he went to Las Vegas to cover a motorcycle race for Motorcycle Magazine, but while there bumped into a district attorney's convention on fighting drugs, and that he went and attended some of their sessions while high. Now that's funny, but to hear him describe it makes it funnier. And so the movie just didn't quite work out. And I don't know. I mean, so it just one of those things would not work. Lone Dragon says Bill Murray was in Where the Buffalo Roam. Okay, but did that have anything to do with Hunter S. Thompson? What Up says, yes, H.S. Thompson movie, Where the Buffalo Roam. Oh, The Birds Are Free. Most quotable movie is Princess Bride. I do not think that word means what you think it means. We actually used that as an ending quote with a Canadian Robot Lady earlier this week. I'm sure some people caught that. David Person says Steve Martin's best film was L.A. Story. And I actually would agree with you on that, in my opinion. In other words, if you said, Steve, which is your favorite movie by Steve Martin, it would be L.A. Story. And L.A. Story is not as well known, but in L.A. Story, he plays a weatherman in Los Angeles. And he meets and falls in love with a British woman. And you can't do it just without seeing it, but it's got a very Steve Martin feel to it. And it's got some very, very funny stuff. Although Man with Two Brains is right up there too. And the movie's actually, one of them references the other one. But I liked LA Story a lot. I mean, it's a fabulous movie. And there's a whole bunch of stuff going on in that movie as well, which I would highly recommend if you haven't seen it. Likewise with The Man with Two Brains. And Michigan Veterans Museum mentions The Man with Two Brains. There you go. James does like The Princess Bride. And Doug Jones says Rodney Dangerfield gets no respect. Well, I think he liked it that way, though. Sergeant Bob says Bill Murray in Lost in Translation is exactly how I felt in Japan. I also saw a lesser-known Bill Murray film a couple days ago called St. Vincent. And if I tell you what it's about, you're going to go, it doesn't sound interesting. But Bill Murray is capable of taking a film that you might think wouldn't sound that interesting. And by the time it's over, you go, oh my, it was brilliant. It's fabulous. And so Lost in Translation, I love that movie too. And it's hard to describe what the movie's about without making it sound real boring. Guy goes to Japan and, bumbles around and has some issues with translation. And likewise in St. Vincent. And then yet at the end of the movie, you're going, that was an amazing movie. But it only worked because Bill Murray is so good at what he does. And that, so it really is important. Good Citizen says conversations wander. Thanks to the live stream. Thank you. And so here's the thing. I've had people occasionally complain and go, why don't you talk about important stuff? This is important. I'd rather have a conversation like this for 2 hours than 2 hours on the finer points of some, I don't know, rezoning issue. And some county out in Utah. So not knocking anything happening in Utah, by the way, but we digress, is Icon. Doug Jones, Bill Murray, and Groundhog Day. Groundhog Day, by the way, is a masterpiece. It's you can't elevate that film high enough by praising it as where it belongs. Groundhog Day is just beyond the description. It's such a good movie. And I have the director's cut of that movie, and I've watched it with the commentary of the directors commenting on it, and or the creators commenting on it. And one of them pointed out that they'd gotten the manuscript pitched to them, the screenplay pitched to them, and the screenplay originally didn't have an explanation as to why the guy was there or why it was happening to him. So they had come up with the idea. Ramis came up with the idea of having the guy be a weatherman and having him reliving this Groundhog Day over and over again, because that's the kind of thing that a weatherman would get stuck doing. And if he was a cynical weatherman, that would be hell for him. And he then later said that he goes, one amazing thing about the movie is he goes, everywhere I go, when people meet me, they go, "Oh, you did Groundhog Day." He says, "Yes." They go, "We're so glad you finally did a movie that expresses the spiritual nature of our religion." And they name a religion: Catholicism, Buddhism, Christianity, Hinduism. He goes, every single religion out there has claimed that movie for representing how they are, not the other people, us. Because deep down, Bill Murray has to understand that he no longer is this bitter person who hates everything, that life is better when he actually appreciates everything and learns to live that way. And every single religion out there on their good days thinks that's what they're about, but not the other guys. He goes, obviously, it's not a religious movie at all. Oh, Devin Bounds Stripes with Bill Murray. Yeah. Who'd have thought, if you look at Bill Murray's career, the different movies he's done and the, the spectrum of it. Haikon, it's not religion, it's humanism. Yeah, but try to tell the people from different religions that. Zafar Sayed says the friendship between Harold Ramis and Bill Murray broke during the filming of Groundhog Day. Really? I did not know that. William Page had to watch Airplane 3 times to catch all the jokes. He had watched it a year later, and half of them will come back. Oh, I forgot about that one. The prodigal stranger, so long, boys, have fun storming the castle. Lone Dragon, have you seen Bill Murray? What about Bob? It's been a while, but I'm pretty sure I did see it. Mark Miller, it's almost 60F in Metro Denver. Wow. I got 43 in rain, and yeah, it's still raining. So Robert Sherman, go back and watch Rocky and Bullwinkle as an adult. Yeah, I've not seen those in a long time. Fly Chomper Fly, Joe Dirt. I believe in the prime directive when it comes to getting involved in world affairs. Brittany Madrano. Hey, Steve, excited I caught a live. How are you? I'm fine. How are you? David Person says it's going to be over 80 degrees tomorrow in Austin. 80 degrees. The Prodigal Stranger says, isn't the sailing plate on your wall a reference to What About Bob? No, the sailing plate on the wall behind me, which is actually right there, was sent in by a viewer, and he actually had it on his car. And he actually had an extra one. He sent it to me because that's a real plate. It was actually on my car, and if you want to put it on your wall, you can. Now, if he got it in a reference to that, I don't know, but I think it was a guy who's just into sailing. Captain Walt, hi Steve, what are you talking about today? Whatever you want to talk about. What of says Princess Bride's director told actor Billy Crystal to just ad lib, and they filmed him for several days doing his Miracle Max scene, making up all sorts of lines and scenes. And I'm sure they had a nightmare going through and trying to pick him because he probably could have done an hour long scene with just that. But yeah, it was one of the one of the wilder parts of the movie. Emery was Bill Murray in Little Shop of Horrors. Rick Moranis was. I don't know about Bill Murray. Long time since I saw that. Joe Phillips, how often do you go running and how far? What's your favorite running shoe? I haven't been running in a while, sadly. I'll admit that. I did not run the Free Press Marathon this year. I missed it for running anything down there for the first time in quite some time. I tend to wear Asics running shoes, Asics. I've been wearing them for years. That's what I just do. So Bob Blah Blah, I always loved John Candy, the characters he played. Yeah, he was cool. He was a cool guy. He seemed like a nice guy too, you know. G Keyman 565 says in The Princess Bride, the scene where the guy fights the big guy. You mean Andre? Well, telling how he killed his sister was used in the Game of Thrones. I'll admit I've never seen a Games of Thrones episode. Never seen one. I just never just someday I might, but I haven't watched a single one. The birds are free, says gotta run, Steve. So long, and thanks for all the fish. What's great is when Douglas Adams says that the Dolphins left. I think he just said they left of their own volition or something like that, and he didn't say how. Just they left. Like they could have left any time they wanted to. Gilbert, any snow left on the ground? No, no. Everything we had melted. Let me double check. Everything we had melted by yesterday, so it's all gone now. Eric L. I never thought I'd like Game of Thrones, but I loved it. I've heard people talking about it, but like no one I know personally was raving about it. I just never started watching it. So someday I might, but I just haven't. There's that. The Sopranos is another one. I never saw a single episode of Sopranos, not a single one. Just never did. So yeah, I got that to look forward to. I can binge watch that for a couple weeks, right? Connor Thomas is yesterday's up to the 60s around here. Guessing Michigan's warm too. We were in the 50s where I am, Southeast Michigan, 50s. So Southern Torrance is the last season of Game of Thrones was awful though. So yeah, Brian Fullerton says on the Blues Brothers, we have both kinds of music here, country and Western. There is a shirt in my collection, and I'm trying to remember if it's still there or not, but it says that on the front in some iteration of that. Both kinds of music, country and Western. And it's clearly a reference to that. Richard Terhune, MASH. Yeah, MASH. Oh, MASH is still on right now. It's on. I think it's. I always get them confused. It's Cozy TV or Me TV. And the first season or two were really good, and then it just coasted, and it got really weird and lame towards the end. And if I turn it on and it's a late episode, and Larry Linville is gone, and Klinger's wearing regular clothing, I'm like, this is going to be a long one. So, Lowell Riggs I am says, "Mash, my favorite episode was Tuttle." Yeah, and what a lot of people don't know is that Tuttle was taken from a Russian short story, and it's I mean it's something they acknowledge. but I think a lot of people didn't know that. But there was a short story written, I forgot it was World War One or two, about a unit at the front that invented somebody, and they're simply collecting his paychecks because they thought who's gonna miss it, and then somebody came by to double check on the guy, and so they had to have him killed off in a heroic manner, and that became the plot to uh, Tuttle in the in Mash. So Mark Hiles checking in late from Surf City. Thank you, my friend. Daniel Kessler says Bill Murray was not in the Little Shop of Horrors. I didn't think so, but Dimebag Coins, I used to say the same thing you see about The Sopranos, about One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, and I saw it. Yeah, but One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest is a movie. The Sopranos is a whole series. Like, you can't jump in the middle. Like, it's not like you're going to watch, like, hearing people talk about The Sopranos for 3 years, you're not going to jump in and watch one in the middle and go, oh, what do you do then? Go back and rewatch them all? You know? So, but yeah, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest is a fascinating movie. And I like that one too. You know, it's an older movie, but it's a good movie. So Jay Klein, MASH got preachy. Yeah, MASH also got. I mean, I think Alan Alda got too much creative control. I think there were episodes. If you turn on a MASH and it's directed by Alan Alda, just turn it off because he's gonna be doing something heroic where he's on screen for 28 minutes. You know, there's an episode where he thinks he may have suffered a concussion, so he's got to stay awake, but he's not around anybody who speaks English. So he's in a hut with some Koreans, and he's doing like Groucho Marx impressions, which, by the way, he does that in like every single episode. And it wasn't that funny when he did it the first time. It ain't that funny the 100th time. And for some odd reason, he was convinced that his Groucho Marx impressions were hilarious. And I mean, there's some really, really bad episodes. But you know, the show is a phenomenon. It's hard to say anything about that. The Prodigal Stranger says Bill Murray was the patient who liked pain. Steve Martin's dentist office in Little Shop. Okay. And Waddley99 says that. Okay. Rusty PFA, the amount of talent that came out of the Second City Comedy Club in Chicago is just astounding. And then don't forget about National Lampoon, because that's where a lot of the guys from Saturday Night Live came from, who then later on made movies that we're talking about right now. Brian Fullerton is in the actual place called Surf City, New Jersey. LRG says, I like the episode of Radar was the corporal captain in the bar. I just saw that one. That's the episode where BJ shows up and Trapper leaves. And Trapper leaves out saying goodbye to Hawkeye. And Hawkeye's got to rush out to airbase. Doesn't catch him. And of course, then their Jeep gets stolen. So they steal one to get home. And meanwhile, they step into the officers club for drinks. And that's what happens. So Padres' Mad Magazine parodied the movie with One Cuckoo Flew Over the Rest. Jay Klein says, yeah, Alan Alda was the issue. But people loved him and it worked. So, you know, it's, you know, hard to say. Tom K, your opinion is Die Hard a Christmas movie? I love Scotch. Waves and gives some kind of thumbs up there. Well, that might be a pause. It's hard to say, but thank you. Appreciate that. Oh, Ember Miss 69. My sister's boyfriend loves MASH. William Page says, no matter what Bill Murray does, it's always Bill Murray. I would disagree. And I would suggest that you watch the movie St. Vincent if you haven't, because you'll recognize that it is Bill Murray. He looks like Bill Murray, but his character is so different then it actually works. So I would encourage you to do that. But yeah, Bill Murray's got a certain look and a certain sound. He's always going to look and sound like that. But he's done so many diverse roles, you know. So DePaul 31, hi Steve, late but made it. Happy New Year, and to you, my friend. And Yasmini Gutierrez is checking in from Spain. I appreciate it. Jeff Massey, Colonel Flag, the CIA spook in MASH. What's funny is he made an official appearance in 4 episodes, I believe, but he actually was in an earlier episode with a non-speaking part playing poker. But he did later say, I'd been here before. So he may have actually been there as a CIA agent posing as somebody else. But it's hard to say. But there you go. Anyways, Canadian Robot Lady points out that it's now 3 o'clock. So it's time for me to pack up and get going. Let me know if we'll be live streaming or counting down New Year's Eve. Have a great weekend. Everyone chat soon. And I'm going to wrap it up as well because it is past 3 o'clock. And we can only do this for so long before somebody gets bored. So there you go. Blah, blah, blah. Well, Steve, I'll see you New Year's Eve. I'll bring my own party favors. Until then, everyone, behave yourself. Bye-bye.